Sam Stein, you've got some new numbers from the Morning Consult political poll on the man who started all this, President Trump. What did you find?
Well, I mean, what we found was that his standing in the Republican Party is still firm, but it's slipping ever so slightly. What you see right there is, should former President Trump play a role, a minor or major role in the Republican Party? GOP 65 yes, Democrats 11%, Independents 25%. Now, 65% may seem like a lot to most people, but it's not that much when you think of the last 4 years, where that number would have been in the mid to high 90s. Now, I don't know how that jives with what we saw yesterday in terms of that vote. What we saw yesterday in terms of vote is a Senate Republican caucus that still very much feels at least a little bit of intimidation, I would argue, from President Trump. It sort of reminds me of the posture they took at various junctures in the last 4 years, where they assumed that he would essentially recede, or that the scandal that he had caused would eventually evaporate, and they could move on without having to do any of the sort of heavy lifting to censure or push back or constrain him, that it would resolve itself. Now, that might be the case because he's out of office now. He doesn't have his Twitter feed. But what we saw yesterday was a Republican Party that still very much feels intimidated by him. This poll shows that there is slippage, that if only 65% of Republicans feel like he should have a major or minor role in the future of their party, and this is only a couple weeks after he left office, that there is, in fact, a portion of Republicans that are ready to move on.
I mean, if you'd asked that same question of Barack Obama, Willie, at this stage, you'd be in the 90s. In fact, Barack Obama is so funny in the first primary when some Democrats were suggesting that he wasn't liberal enough. We kept gently reminding those Democrats attacking Barack Obama that the guy had a 90% approval rating inside the party. And if you'd asked the question, the other poll is more interesting to me. Put up the other poll where asked, should Donald Trump run again? Because this is a threat he's been making to Republicans nationwide. That number drops down to 56%. And I got to say, if I'm out of office and I want to run again, and I'm Donald Trump, and only about 1 in 2 Republicans are saying, nah, you know what? Maybe you don't run again. That actually does show erosion of support for a guy that held this party completely in sway not so long ago.
Yeah, the numbers may be slipping, but what those Republican senators showed us yesterday is they still fear him. They fear him more than they fear the consequences of letting him go and letting this attack on the Capitol slide. I mean, they just do. And Casey, when you go down the list, as I said earlier, only 5 Republicans voted against this motion from Rand Paul. Is it as pure as we fear this guy who's going to wake up this morning in Palm Beach and go play golf and shoot a 92 or whatever he's going to do today? They're just plain scared of him. They're scared of what he could mean for their political future. Is it that simple? Case?
I think that's basically the case, Willie. Each member has their own individual reasons for feeling this way. They have, whether they have family considerations, they're trying to make a buck. Each one of them has to make their own set of calculations. But the reality is Donald Trump still has an incredibly strong hold over many of the people that they would need to vote for them if they were to run for re-election. I think what Rob Portman does will be a real test, because he is now not running for re-election. So in theory, that frees him up to not have to be accountable to that and to make a decision that is purely based on conscience and what he thinks is the right thing to do.
Hey, thanks so much for watching our YouTube channel. You can follow up on today's top stories and breaking news, or catch up on your favorite MSNBC shows all in one place. Download the NBC News app today.